Hi and welcome to my channel. I've had this lovely old Kodak Specialist half-plate camera for several years now, and it's taken some great pictures for me. I went and bought its granddad, this 1924 Kodak 2D, and I bought it in really rough condition. I'll tell you why I bought it and how I got it to look all nice and shiny like this, coming up. My Specialist is, I believe, the British-made version, made under license, and it was initially known as, I believe, the RAF ground camera, and you'll see ones for sale painted up in blue-grey in their Air Force colours. This one is a post-World War II one, which was sold specifically as either a medical or a police forensic camera. As such, I've got to admit, it's a bit of a boat anchor. And what I was actually looking for was something that I could use away from the studio that was a bit lighter and wasn't going to play up my back. And the 2D, which was introduced, I believe, in 1921 and was made in Rochester in New York, actually was designed as either a studio camera or a field camera, or a view camera as people would have called it. So when I saw this one, I snapped it up because it wasn't for a lot of money, but as I say, it was in very rough condition. The Kodak 2D view camera was a large format camera produced by Eastman Kodak from 1921 to 1950. It was the successor to the earlier Eastman View No. 2 and was available in sizes for 5x7, 6.5 by 8.5, 8x10 and 7x11 inch plates. This camera was known as a robust and reliable tool for professional photographers, particularly for portrait studios and landscape work. Eastman Kodak bought out many small camera makers and consolidated the design along the way, with subcontracted companies building the product like Graflex. The Kodak 2D was in fact manufactured by the Fulmer and Schwing division of Eastman Kodak until 1926, when that division was spun off as the Fulmer Graphic Corporation, and then, after a reorganization in 1945, by Graflex. Sadly, my new Kodak 2D didn't look anything like the catalogue illustrations. Essentially, all any film camera is a place to put the film, something to keep the light out and to allow you to focus properly. Unfortunately, the poor old 2D fell down on everything except the place to put the film. The back was actually in quite good condition, although the screen had seen better days. But the bellows were incredibly moth-eaten and had holes all over the place in the folds and corners. Worse still, the woodwork of the rails was actually broken, mostly in the centre section under the camera body, which meant the camera body flopped around and really wasn't very stable. So firstly, I would have to attend to the bellows, at least get some ordered, and secondly, I'd have to sort out the woodwork. And here's how I did it. I'd seen adverts on eBay for some time for replacement bellows for all kinds of cameras, including Mamiya RB67s and all kinds of things, all from China, and mostly seeming to come from the same manufacturer. So I decided to take a little bit of a gamble on it. As you can see, it's £157, but I actually watched it for a while, and I got an offer, so I got it a little bit cheaper. I think it was about $149 or something like that. But I took a risk and I ordered it. And actually very quickly, within about 2.5 weeks, I got a package from China with a beautiful set of red bellows in. And although somewhat thinner than the original bellows, they're a very tough material and absolutely light-tight. And a man-made material, so they won't rot or get subject to insect attack like the leather that the originals were made out of. Now to fix the woodwork. The guide rails? Yes, I suppose you could call them guide rails. The rails that the front and rear standard move on are actually made out of cherry, which is one of the weaknesses or Achilles heel of the early Kodak 2Ds and even my later 1940s Kodak Specialist. Later versions of the Specialist actually clad those side rails in aluminium to try and cure the wear problem, which I think it largely did. Later rails, like my Specialist, were also made of maple rather than cherry, which was, I believe, a bit tougher, but still not really up to the job. So you'll see quite a few of these old 2Ds and Specialists that have a problem with the side rails. Once again, eBay was my friend, and I bought a sheet of 5mm thick cherry, which I then proceeded to chop into replacement rails. You'll see me fixing them here using good old-fashioned traditional hide glue. In fact, I didn't use the hide glue that is in the dispenser that you can see behind the work I'm doing there. I actually used hot hide glue from a boiler because I used that in some musical instrument repair, and it tends to grab up a bit quicker. And you'll see I'm using the good old-fashioned traditional rubber bands to get everything into place. I had to repeat this repair on both sides of the centre section of the rails and on the extreme inboard end of the front extension. The rear extension had actually got off scot-free for the last 100 or so years, but probably because it wasn't used quite as much. So here you can see the lower centre section all repaired and the folded into the vertical position front rails with a couple of patches put into those because they weren't as bad. I then got hold of some testers for various different wood dyes and proceeded to dye them down to a matching colour for the old wood. As you can see here, the rear of the centre section, where the rear standard normally lives, had been broken quite badly at some stage, and the racks didn't line up between the rear extension and the centre section, so that when you attempted to rack the rear standard backwards onto the rear extension, it jammed every time. This was because the glue joint was bad, everything was out of place, and it needed taken apart and re-glued properly. I did that and everything started working properly. At this point, I removed the bellows and the bellows frames and set all the rest of the camera to one side, ready to receive the bellows when I put the new ones in. The eagle-eyed may notice I also made a new leather carrying strap out of some hide leather that I got from, I think, eBay or Amazon or somewhere, and chopped that out with a template that I made on my laser cutter. Gluing the bellows to the front bellows frame went in a fairly straightforward fashion, although anything involving contact adhesive is always messy, smelly and fairly unpleasant. I wear neoprene gloves when I do it, but it's just still a horrible task. The original bellows were simply pushed through the rear frame, folded over card stringers, and then nailed to the frame. This proved to be extremely difficult, so I actually used some contact adhesive just to get everything into position before I put the card in and nailed everything down. I managed to reuse the nails that were holding the original bellows in. Those were tiny and were a bit of a pain to put in. I had to use a pair of long nose pliers to hold the nails while I tapped them in with a pin hammer. I gave all the brasswork a good going over with a fairly gentle Scotch-Brite type abrasive pad from a company called Merlon Grey. And then I gave a going over with Brasso and a shine up with a cloth and put everything back together. And 101 years just fell away. So, with the old girl completed, I took it upon myself to order a large box of Fomapan 400, which will be a first for me. I've tried the 100 and I've tried the 200. Now we'll have a crack at the 400, and I may even try the soft version at 320, I think it is, after that. But we'll see. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you've really enjoyed it and you want to see some more, then perhaps you'll think about subscribing. Also, I'm putting some new stuff up on Patreon. I'll put a link in the description. A guide to buying second-hand equipment. And I'll probably put up something on handheld light meters, which is an interesting subject. They're very useful. Anyway, until I see you again, you take care of yourselves and keep taking pictures, especially big ones.